Good morning, Metalheads here, net. Welcome to a new episode of the Metal Meltdown, and today we are looking at a surprise EP from New York hardcore crossover thrash titans, Cro-Mags, entitled Don't Give In. And I do mean literally a surprise EP. I had no idea that this was being released. I hadn't heard any promo singles or any press about it. Hell, I wasn't even sure what the state of Cro-Mags was, because they've had a lot of legal issues these last couple years. There have been a lot of fights on the inside about who owns the name Cro-Mags and who should own the name Cro-Mags and all that shit. And as a result, now you've kind of got a situation where the band has split in two, very similar to what happened to LA Guns and Queensryche a couple years back. Mind you, there has been an active version of Cro-Mags for a while. They've even toured as recently as this spring, opening for Hatebreed and Obituary on their North American tour. But still, the legal status made everything kind of messy, and still, there wasn't any new music, and now here comes Don't Give In, pretty much confirming that Cro-Mags is back, Cro-Mags is under control, and there's more on the fucking way. This particular version of Cro-Mags, which I think we can safely call the real Cro-Mags, is headed up by founding member Harley Flanagan, who himself has had an interesting history with the band in these last 2 decades. To say that I could make an entire video just about Harley Flanagan is a fucking understatement. So for now, all you really need to know is that Harley has fought very hard over the years to get the rights to Cro-Mags back, and now he does. Rounding out the rest of the lineup, you have Gabby Abilarak, a former member of the previous version of Cro-Mags. You also have Rocky George, who also performed with Cro-Mags many years ago and also made a name for himself performing with Suicidal Tendencies and Fishbone. And you also have some new blood in the form of Gary Sullivan, who I don't know anything about, but if he's got the Cro-Mags stamp of approval, then he's good by me. By now, it should be very clear to you that there's a lot of talent and a lot of history for this new version of Cro-Mags. A lot to expect going into it. I mean, Cro-Mags are legends of New York City hardcore, and this is something that Harley Flanagan has fought for years. For that reason, it is a little upsetting that even by the standards of an EP, this is a remarkably short release, wrapping up at exactly 6 minutes and 6 seconds. Which is even more frustrating when you realize that this is the first music that any version of Cro-Mags has put out in nearly 20 years. 19 and a half if you want to be super fucking exact. Which is even more frustrating when you remember that the last time any version of Cro-Mags put out new music was nearly 19 and a half years ago. It is, to say the least, a bit of an immediate bummer. If you've been salivating over the idea of a full Cro-Mags record, I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to wait. You're gonna have to keep it together. Thankfully, Don't Give In still does the best it can with those aforementioned 6 minutes and 6 seconds. The band is playing their signature old-school hardcore punk sound with a bit of underlying thrash metal influence, but nonetheless something that will be immediately familiar to classic fans of this band. It's abrasive, it's simple, crammed with attitude, it doesn't waste any time. I mean, for fuck's sakes, the longest track on here takes up only half of the entire EP. The EP is even kind of nostalgic for me personally. It really does capture that classic sound so well. It brought me back to being a teenager and discovering Cro-Mags for the first time, as well as discovering the broader spectrums of hardcore for the first time. Bands like Black Flag, Suicidal Tendencies, Agnostic Affront, Refused, all that kind of stuff. And it starts right away with title track Don't Give In, which immediately encourages only the nastiest of mosh pits with its abrasive punk rock spirit, its powerful hardcore riffing, a really cool fist-pumping chant-along section near the end of the track highlighted by a really fiery heavy metal-influenced guitar solo leading directly into Drag You Under, a thrashier kind of affair, a little spicier, but still within the general Cro-Mags wheelhouse. Following and last track, No One's Victim, does perhaps a little too closely follow the pattern of Drag You Under, but it's still brimming with enthusiasm and rage and violence. It's still so effective despite that. And frankly, it's even somewhat expected. If this was my first piece of music in 20 years, I would not be cranking out anything super experimental or progressive or overtly liberal. I would be keeping things pretty fucking safe. So I don't blame Cro-Mags for repeating ideas and musical concepts on 2 fucking songs. And it especially doesn't bother me when, again, it's still super fun. Again, really the biggest issue with this thing is its length. When you're really starting to get into it, when you're really starting to get excited about this music, the entire EP kind of ends. Again, at a sharp 6 minutes and 6 seconds. Even calling this an EP is frankly a little generous. For comparison's sake, take a look at a recent EP from Soilwork, which I actually reviewed briefly on my Albums I Missed video. That EP, Underworld, is actually triple the length of Don't Give In, wrapping up at 18 minutes. I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5 because I was still really enjoying myself. Even if this is an incredibly, even infuriatingly short release, it was still packed full of good riffs, packed full of good choruses. It was angry, it was loud, it was everything that I expect and want from hardcore punk, from classic hardcore punk. It doesn't rely on modern tricks or conventions. It's not interested in new bands like Turnstile and Code Orange. It just comes in and it does its thing and it fucking goes home. Yes, it would be objectively better to have something a little longer, but again, considering everything Cro-Mags has been through, considering everything that has happened, I think we should count ourselves lucky that we even got this. On the plus side, because of its length, it would make for a pretty interesting gateway into hardcore punk for anyone who isn't already associated with this genre. And also because of its length, it just makes it easy to recommend in general, because it's like, well, even if you don't like it, fuck it, it's done in 6 minutes. It's not like you spent a lot of time listening to this. So I still say give it a shot, and worst case scenario, if you're really salivating for even more after this, there's plenty of modern hardcore to still dig into, and for that matter, you can use that as an opportunity to learn a little bit about Cro-Mags and their other records. 3 out of 5, a slightly underwhelming, but still ultimately really fun EP. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.